So just a show of hands, how many people are working in AI or analytics or data science? Okay. So there's good news for you guys, because it's a great time to be a data scientist and it's a great time to be working in this space. As we keep hearing, the volumes of data that's now available to us is growing at exponential rates. But what's more interesting from our standpoint is the type of data we're getting. So back to the previous presentation, the data has become very personal. And it's personal for a couple of reasons. One is that technology is being embedded into everything we do. So we heard earlier talk about mobile devices, we've got social media. They say that people spend more time with their mobile phones than they do with their spouses. It's the first thing we see when we get up in the morning. We often use it for our alarm clock, and it's the last thing we see before we go to bed at night. So we spend a lot of time with our devices, and as we're spending time with our devices, they're generating lots of data about us. So this is really, really exciting. It's exciting not only that it's giving us lots of data, but it's changing the type of use cases that we can explore as data scientists, because we're learning more about an individual. So moving forward, we're seeing use cases that range from cars that know where you need to be or where they need to be and can just drive themselves there. We have medicine, where we're learning so much about an individual, about their lifestyle, about their genetics, about their clinical state, that is being used to basically transform their health and be very proactive, where you have got mobile devices that can alert somebody to a condition or to a problem before it happens. So this is a really exciting time with lots of data, lots of use cases. What's really interesting, and specifically from an Irish standpoint, is this is also a great time to diversify our industry. Not only a great time, but it's a critical time. And we heard earlier in the IDA presentation that Ireland has got the most diverse workforce, with something like 15% of our workforce being international. You hear from everybody that diversity is important, but for our industry, it is specifically important for a few reasons. I've been about 20 years working in AI, long before it was as hot as it is now. And one of the things is that when we started, we were looking very much at analytics for optimizing businesses. So looking at logistics, looking at manufacturing. And that was okay, but it was a very narrow focus, a very narrow part of society that was going to be impacted by what we're doing. Today, AI is becoming embedded into everything. So we are fundamentally changing society. And that's a huge responsibility for all of us. But it also means that we cannot transform society if we're not building these types of solutions with a demographic, with innovations that represent society. And we need innovation in many different ways. We need innovation in terms of representation of women, who are very, very, poorly represented in this space. And we need women not just for their science and engineering skills, but we also need them for their empathy, their collaboration, all those other skills, specifically when we're looking at building solutions for society as a whole. We also need diversity from an academic standpoint. We need to have data scientists working with humanists, working with social scientists, working with philosophers, working with psychologists. If we are going to build solutions that are going to change how society works, that's going to change how our brains work, which is in fact happening today, we need to understand what that really means. It's not enough. Data scientists, we're very focused on the data, and we can do amazing things with the data. We don't always see the impact of what we're doing. So I think diversity from an academic standpoint is really important. And this is something which Ireland does particularly well. We're a small country, we have a small number of universities, but we have lots of collaboration across those universities. So this presents some really interesting opportunities. And the third type of diversity we need ethnic, and we need geographical diversity, again, playing well to Ireland's strengths. Because when we build a solution here in Dublin, or you build a solution in Silicon Valley, this is a solution that could be used by a child in Nepal or somebody in Tokyo. So it's a very diverse group that will ultimately consume the innovation that we create. So we need a diverse group of people building it. Now, the title of my presentation is about putting society at the center of AI innovation. So the rest of the presentation, I wanted to talk about what that means to me. And I just use this term about, do no harm. This sounds like really extreme. And it sounds like, so when we're building these AI solutions, nobody building these is planning to do harm. I can tell you, we're all excited about data. We're excited about the transformations that we can realize from the work we do. But the problem is our space is really at risk for doing harm unintentionally. And the main reason for this is that, particularly because we're now building these solutions for the general public, it's very hard for us to predict how people are going to use the innovation we create, and to predict what's the impact of that's going to have on individuals and societies. And I'm going to use a very, very simple and topical example to demonstrate that. Because it's been in the news recently. We've seen a lot of talk about the social news feeds and the role that news feeds have had in the toxic role in dividing society. This is something that we all knew in the beginning. We've been building feeds and personalized feeds for over a decade. And the reason why we build them is a very, very good reason, is information overload. There's too much information out there. We want to help individuals find the information that they need to know. The problem is that the filter bubble there's a very high risk when you build personalized feeds, so you create a filter bubble, and this in turn divides society. We knew this 10 years ago. We created these feeds, so they went into social media. 10 years later, we have a toxic environment, and now we're trying to go back and fix that. Social media companies are trying to figure out how can we fix the filter bubble problem. So this is one simple example. So with that in mind, a few years ago, I was really interested, and IBM has been very interested in exploring how do we build analytic solutions for broad populations that take that into consideration, that try to be very transparent, to be very inclusive, to communicate what's happening instead of analytics being black boxes. So I was fortunate enough to work on a project which we call Project Breadcrumb, and the idea was that we would collect all in IBM we have a very large social and collaboration network, so we've been building these types of solutions, and we've been using collaboration within our company for about 15 years, probably 20 years. So we have a lot of data about how IBMers work with each other, how they collaborate, how they interact, how they exchange information, how they learn. And we wanted to explore how could we analyze all this data to deliver some value to IBM, but also to the individuals. And this is a perfect example because in IBM it gives us a microcosm of the public, and it allowed us to explore how could we build these solutions in a way that engaged the individual, that people felt comfortable with, they felt they trusted, and that it fundamentally did no harm. So what I'd like to do for the rest of the presentation is just share with you some observations from having done that work over a period of several years. Towards the end of the project, we had about 40,000 or so IBMers using the system. So the first observation, it shouldn't be a massive surprise to anybody, is that there is value in analyzing this type of data. I think the thing that's really important, though, is back to my, doing no harm. We wanted to build this system to be employee-centric. So everything we did was from the perspective of the employee. What did they need? So all this is the byproduct of doing something for the employees. What the employees wanted to understand is, how am I perceived within the organization? What is my level of expertise in particular areas? Do I need to learn more? Who could I learn from? Who are the communities and the groups and the content that I need to be thinking about? And how do I build a network that helps me maximize my own value, my own learning, my own expertise? But the process of doing that analysis generated some really interesting value for the organization. The first thing that we discovered, which again, probably shouldn't be too surprising, was that people that are highly engaged and productively engaged is the important thing, are much more innovative than those that aren't. So if I'm connected and if I'm collaborating with the right types of people in the right types of way, I'm going to generate fundamentally more innovation for myself and for the company than if I'm not. And our measure of innovation in this case was things like patents and publications, because IBM, we generate a lot of data around patents and publications. We also found that changes in engagement are highly predictive of whether or not somebody's going to leave the company. So again, if people start to change how they react and how they engage with other members of the company, it will tell you a lot about how likely they are to leave. And this also tells you whether or not you've got attrition risk more broadly within your company, if you've got issues potentially with churn, or you will have issues with churn moving forward, and allows you to rapidly start to look at what can I do to address those issues. And the final thing was information flow. The other thing that was a byproduct of building this analysis for the IBM as the employees was that we discovered that information flows around companies in ways that companies don't always understand. They don't know who are the information brokers. They don't know how brittle their networks are. By brittleness, I mean, for example, you've got teams that should be collaborating, should be exchanging information, and the exchanges are limited to a couple of people. If those people leave the company, the knowledge distribution collapses. So this is brittleness within the knowledge network. We were able to generate all these insights for the business completely de-identified, because obviously this was a solution for IBMers. It was private and confidential to them. It was completely secure. Nobody else saw their results. So this was all de-identified insights that we were able to generate on the back of doing this solution for IBMers. So I guess what this told us is that you can have it both ways. You can build a solution for individuals that they feel safe and secure, that they trust, that's private, but through various de-identification techniques, you can also generate value for the business. And on that point, the other observation that we rapidly recognized is that people do not like to be analyzed. They don't like to be spied on. They don't like to feel that people are watching what they're doing. This was a really big issue, and we initially started discussing this with IBMers. This was the number one concern. Big Brother is watching. So we had to really, really work hard to make sure that every IBMer really was confident that their data was secure, it was safe, it was private. Any insights we generated would only be seen by them. So that was actually what was transformative in this project. What we found was that as soon as we started to build trust, as soon as people recognized that we were respecting their privacy, that there was some form of informed consent, also transparency. This is the thing we often forget. As society becomes more data aware, and as AI becomes more of a popular concept that everybody is talking about, as people, and we've seen, like, for example, in the US with the Trump elections, and we've seen the conversations about news feeds, and all of a sudden the public are getting very engaged. They're engaged with politics, they're engaged with technology, they're questioning social media. So as society starts to become more savvy about analytics and its impact, we need to be more transparent about what the heck we're doing. If companies are collecting our data, we need to know what they're collecting, we need to know why they're collecting, and actually more important to me is we need to know what insights they're generating from our data. If a company knows something about us, I damn well want to know that they know it. I don't want them keeping it secret. And today, there's no reason that they have to tell us. They have to tell us they're collecting our data, but they don't have to tell us what insights they've generated about us. And that, to me, is where I think, moving forward, we need greater transparency around data. And this is what's worked for us. And it was hard, because it's hard to explain AI to people who aren't data scientists or aren't mathematicians. So we had to think about ways that we can clearly describe what we're doing and the insights we're generating in a way that everybody felt comfortable with. And this is a really important challenge for anybody working in the AI space. And the first observation is about the economics of data. So we here talk about all the data we have. But back to my earlier point about people and their concerns, people are concerned about how their data is being used. The conversation frequently goes towards privacy, where the knee-jerk reaction is to say, I don't want any data collected. We should stop collecting data. I actually believe it's completely the opposite. I believe we need to be collecting more data. But we need to be having very, very clear rules and regulations around ownership. Who owns the data? What commitment and expectations should I have around the transparency about what's happening with my data? De-identification is an important part of that, because if we look to the future, from my standpoint, today, data is already like a currency. We use data to pay for products and services. But moving forward, it's going to be even more critical. And what we are going to have is we're going to have the data haves and the data have-nots. The people who have data, who have lots of data, who have rich data, are going to be treated better than the people that don't. And there's some simple examples, which are already starting to show up today. So if we look about employment, when I'm looking to get a job, companies are looking to influence. They're looking to external social media. They're looking to the internet to see what is somebody's reputation, what is their network, can they influence, have they demonstrated expertise or knowledge in certain spaces. So for people who have lots of data out there, it might be papers they've written, it might be their social network, it might be anything that they've done, they're going to have a better chance of getting the job than people that don't. If we look at health, as we move more towards data-driven health, people who can come to a hospital with a large well of data about themselves, genomics, lifestyle, diet, data that may be collected by multiple different applications. If they can bring that data together, if they have control and if they can deliver that data to their healthcare providers, they are going to get a better treatment than somebody who doesn't have that data. And data cannot be reverse engineered. Like if you're not collecting data in real time and building up a catalog of data about yourself, you can't do it after the fact. So data is going to be so important, and the more data, the better, assuming that there's clear understanding around ownership and privacy and control. So to sum up, as technology gets more deeply embedded into all of our lives, which is a reality, analytics is going to generate some great opportunities for all of us. But it does raise some real societal challenges that we all need to think about. Because if we don't get to terms with this, it is going to create this tug of war between the people the analysees and the analyzers, whether that's the citizen and government, whether it's an employee and an employer, or whether it's a retailer and a consumer. This is the elephant in the room that we all in this space need to think about, because otherwise, the one thing, data is our oil. Data is the thing that keeps us breathing. And if we don't have access to data in a way that society is comfortable with, we're all out of business. So on that note, I'm going to end. Thank you.